Sounds almost biblical in reverse. We've had in many areas at least 40 days and 40 nights of dry weather that has come to an end this evening as we've had some rain, though it's relatively unimpressive and will remain so. We will take a look at the week ahead forecast, which looks like we'll be seeing a downtrend in temperatures, especially Tuesday night and Wednesday. Rafael is barely there in the central Gulf of Mexico and probably soon to disappear. We'll sneak a peek at the long range too, and a few other things tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And if you'd like, you could support the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast by shopping on the referral link that we have pinned to the chat board or on the descriptor to this podcast to Amazon. You just buy your stuff, and then Amazon will throw us back a little bit of coin. It's a great way to support us because it doesn't cost you a dime out of your own pocket. And of course, as always, we appreciate the support we get from the Joe and for the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And good evening, everybody. Hope everybody had a nice weekend. Okay, I hope you got to do something enjoying this weekend with all the noise of last week and everything else that was going on. Uh, took a deep breath and you just kind of did what you had to do. I actually spent the last 2 days doing some woodwork because I bought uh, a chest, a cedar chest, and it's pretty big, and I wanted it to be a coffee table. The chest part is this way I could open up the lid and put in stuff for storage like blankets and things like that. Well, I got it at a thrift store. I paid $90 for it, and the only downside to it was the fact that whoever had that chest before decided that it was a good idea to paint it this. I mean, to me, I just described it as puke green. Okay. Why you would do that to a beautiful wood piece is beyond me. So, I got some paint stripper and a little elbow grease and a little bit of patience. And I was actually able to get about 99% of the paint off. There's a few spots that need some extra work and maybe some sanding. So that was my accomplishment. I finished it today. It's sitting in my living room, and I am a very happy camper. I'm not sure what's going on with Joe Rayo. I don't, let me see, just in case he sent me a message, which he has not. So I have not heard from him. So I don't know if he's having computer problems or what. So we're going to get the show started because I want to watch Yellowstone tonight with the season premiere at 8 o'clock on Paramount and on 10 o'clock tonight on CBS. I'm going to be in bed asleep by the time 10 o'clock rolls around. So he's in the chat waiting for me. Okay, just a moment. Ah, there he is. He finally did come up. Okay, good. He'll be there. He'll be here momentarily.
Well,
Hello.
finally.
Well, I didn't even, the admit thing just came up. It usually comes up full screen on me, but it didn't do that. But anyway, uh, already said hello to everybody. Hi to everybody on the chat board. Welcome to those of you who are watching in the background on tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. We're here Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. The occasional Friday and Saturday when there's rain around. If you like the show, hit the like button and make sure you subscribe and turn your notifications on so you don't miss us. So, Joe, probably the bigger story the last couple of days is the fact that all these wildfires seem to have broken out across parts of eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, which is the
And right here in Putnam Valley, I might add.
really, yeah. I mean, we've had a couple here in North Georgia, but nothing crazy yet. Uh, however, um, I had a 43-day streak of no measurable rain, and it was finally broken today when I got, now wait for it, folks. Okay, are you ready? Point oh 0.03. 0.03 inches of rain. So that breaks my dry streak. There are places. I don't know if William Uber's on the phone on the chat board. But he's in Central Suffolk County. He hasn't had measurable rain where he lives, and I know where he lives because I used to live like less than a mile away from him. Um, 56 days without measurable rainfall, almost 2 months. I mean, we've had dry streaks before, but this is really unheard of.
The fact is, I was in the Catskills for much of this weekend, and we had beautiful blue skies and no real weather problems. But then this morning, as we were heading south on 87, when we got to the exit 18 at New Paltz, all of a sudden, quite suddenly, and in fact, it was so impressive that Renata pulled out her iPhone to take a picture. The sky ahead of us looked very hazy, and in fact, or maybe I should say smoky. And in fact, you could actually smell the smoke. And again, I was, I guess, out of range, or we were out of range. We were up north of Kingston, out of the area of the smoke. But once we headed south and headed into the area where the brush fires have been occurring, you could almost immediately sense that there was something different happening in the sense that we had hazy, smoky conditions. And again, you could actually smell the smoke in the air. I haven't been able to do that since the Canadian wildfire smoke of last year. So it certainly has been something. And when I mentioned about Putnam Valley, yesterday before we left, I'm surrounded, well, not surrounded, but off to the south and to the west are hills that part of the Appalachian mountain chain or range. And sometimes when we have um, rainy weather or a transition, let's say, or a warm front moving through, you can see inside or embedded in the hills patches which look like smoke, and we know that that really is not smoke. That's really ground fog that is taking place. Yesterday, in one particular area, from where I was able to see from my driveway, there was an area that looked like ground fog. Oh, so it's ground fog. I said, "Oh, wait a minute. Hold on for a second. Deep blue sky, low
Right.
humidity, pleasantly mild. That isn't ground fog. That's smoke."
Of a
And
fire.
then my daughter, who was with us this weekend, she said she went out a couple of hours earlier to walk the dog and to pick up the newspaper at the end of the driveway, said, "Oh yeah, I saw that too." So obviously there were, and we found out later on that there were um, brush fires in the immediate vicinity or very close to where I live. And the one thing that Renata has said for years, we've been up here now since 2002, and we're surrounded by tall trees, brushland, woodland areas. She said the one thing that has always concerned her is if we ever got into a very dry spell, that we could be in line for some problems if there was a fire in our area. And indeed, we are in that situation right now. It may be alleviated a little bit tonight by whatever light rain we get, but it looks like we're going right back, Joe, to gusty, windy weather, especially from later tomorrow into Tuesday, along with again unseasonably mild temperatures.
And this rainfall tonight, it's going to do nothing to really. I mean, we're talking about. I don't mean I hate to use the cliche drop in the bucket, but that's really what it is.
Well, yeah, well, they say every little bit helps, and let me assure
You
you,
might be able to spit more.
yeah, exactly. Put the emphasis on little.
Yeah, Rich Rothmansky saying that they had, smoke was at the 4,000 foot level at the local airports around New York. Frank R. talking about the brush fires in Ocean County, New Jersey, where they haven't seen rain in a lot of places since mid-August. So we're talking almost 3 months without rain. Same goes for Suffolk County, as I mentioned earlier. And unfortunately, it does look like now, the models were all see, and this is one of the problems we have in a pattern like this, where it's so dry that dry begets dry. And you look at something like we saw late last week, which is only a week away, and you could have at least some confidence that you were going to get something out of it, uh, with a weather front coming on Thursday, which looked pretty robust around the middle of that for the middle of last week. And we may wind up with next to nothing, if not nothing, come Thursday. We could be dry all week again. This is the sort of
If
an
there's any
anomaly.
way, Remember, like when we were younger, Joe, and we'd see something like what's coming up for next week now. You have a lot of hopes and everything, and then all of a sudden it just goes flat.
Right.
We used to go wah wah
Wah, wah.
wah.
Well, when you're in a rainy pattern where you get a lot of rain and you deal with flooding, uh, rather than drought and wildfires, uh, it's a sort of a self multiplier. You could almost bet that when you're in that rainy pattern, that subsequent systems that are going to come along are going to outperform. In this particular case, in this case, everything that comes is going to underperform. And the same goes in the wintertime with snow. As snow begets snow. If you start seeing one system after another and they all produce, the odds are that the ones that'll follow later on in the winter are also going to produce. And then the reverse is true. So we're just kind of stuck in this. And while a lot of the weenies keep jumping on various model runs that occasionally spit out, we're at the time of year now where they're starting to spit out major snowstorms like the 12Z run did today, for 2 weeks from now. And of course, let's just lock it in, put the map up on social media, you know, and just lock it in. 2 weeks from now, it's going to happen. I mean, it's not even, here we are, it's November 10th. Can we stop that? Can we just stop that? It's sort of like the Category 5 hurricanes that models like to spin up during the summer and fall. Although, to be fair, the models really didn't do a whole lot of that. If anything, they missed on how strong some of this stuff got. So, anyhow, looks like two things about this week right now. After this rain goes out tonight, it now appears like the whole week could wind up being dry and maybe even through next weekend. And the other thing is that Tuesday night into Wednesday, with a high to the north and a north or a north northeast wind. That's usually how we get, that screaming wind down the Hudson Valley. That's usually how we get cold. And I think we'll probably have the cold, let's call it quote unquote, the coldest night area wide of the fall season so far will be Tuesday night into Wednesday morning.
Yeah, we didn't. My weather station here, I was, thinking that we might actually see our first sub-freezing temperatures of the season here, but we didn't get any lower here than 32. I'm wondering whether or not there might have been a few patchy clouds this morning that might have precluded the temperature from dipping to the below the 30-degree mark. But this was I think the coldest we actually did get to freezing. But I was, I think yesterday Renata was asking, what do you think it's going to get? And I said, well, maybe 28, 29, 32. That was a little bit of a disappointment. But you may be right about midweek with the that cold northerly wind. We may finally get into the 20s here with that colder advection pattern coming up for midweek.
Yeah, I kind of think a lot of areas are going to get down into the 20s Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. And it doesn't look like we're going to have any kind of big warm up. The last few weeks, we've been seeing these colder shots come in for a day or two, and then we get these big warm ups that take us to record highs. I'm not seeing us going to that again. So I think we could just maybe hopefully we could put the 80s to rest once and for all.
Yeah, and just as a point of reference, and talking about all of this dry weather, ultra dry weather, not just here but across the country, here in the New York metropolitan area, at Central Park, November the 10th and April the 6th are the two dates in the calendar that are most likely, again, underscore those two words, most likely to have had rainfalls of an inch or more. Since record keeping began in 1869, it's happened 11 years on those dates. And April the 6th, and there's a date that'll ring a bell with a lot of you. You remember 1982, we had that rare late season blizzard. April the 6th had the crown all to itself since 1982. Then November 10th joined in 2000 when 1.48 inches of rain fell. And since that year, the most rain to fall on the 10th of November has been only just a little over a quarter of an inch in 2015. So I guess if you were a betting person and were saying to yourself, well, we'll maybe not break the drought, but we'll finally have some decent rain, legitimate, significant rainfall, it will be on Sunday, the 10th. The best we can offer to you is whatever shower activity is going to occur in the next few hours. It certainly is not going to be anything very significant, but at least it's something. So a lot more than what we have been dealing with over the last 3, 4, 5 weeks.
And let's get some weather rolling here. And as far as watches and warnings are concerned, we should note, by the way, Thursday and Friday, uh, northern New Mexico, particularly northeastern New Mexico and southeastern Colorado, got absolutely clobbered with a snowstorm, leaving in some places 30 inches or more. There were a lot of records that were set from that particular storm. Uh, and of course, what you're seeing tonight is that cold front associated with that low, which has now run up into southeastern Canada. So we're waiting for the front to pass. We've got all sorts of air quality issues up and down the Hudson Valley. We don't have any really adverse weather conditions to report other than the smoke. Also, some issues out in the west with some wildfires there too. But no flood watches, no severe weather tonight. It's actually pretty quiet. And as we check out the satellite loop, a couple of things. Rafael is now a remnant low, and all that's left of that is a weak circulation of low clouds and a little bubble of convection that's southeast of the coast of southeast Louisiana. So that's done. And you can see the front in the east. We've got clouds from Maine down to Georgia. Nothing much in the way of lightning strikes. A couple of stray lightning strikes going on in central North Carolina, and even a couple of flashes in South Central Virginia. Uh, Leftover clouds across the western Great Lakes. As this upper trough shifts eastward, we've got some energy coming in off the Pacific into the Pacific Northwest, but the plains are quiet. Much of the Gulf states are quiet and into the Southwest, and much of Florida is on the quiet side. So here's the radar tonight. Now, there is some heavier rain that has developed in central PA, southwestward into southwest PA and West Virginia. There's also a few heavier downpours in parts of Maryland. Now, some of that may sneak in after this first batch kind of pulls out. So maybe around the 11 p.m., midnight, 1 a.m. areas, the front passes. We get into some of this steadier and heavier rain, and perhaps from that, we'll wind up putting down a quarter of an inch. Maybe somebody gets up to as much as a half an inch. But right now, most of what's in New England and in upstate New York and in the Hudson Valley, Joe, it's on the light, either on the light side or barely, if even reaching the ground.
Well, I did notice when I took my dog out about an hour or so ago, I looked on the driveway and I said to myself, it looks damp. It looks like we've had maybe a trace of precipitation that fell. I mean, really, it was just like the slightest hint that it was not the dry conditions that I had just before sunset. So I don't know what's out there now. I haven't looked at the rain gauge or whatever. I see what you have on the screen with all of that wet weather crossing through the Northeast, but I'm not very optimistic that we're going to see much more than, let's say, a tenth of an inch.
It is raining here now.
Oh, thank you, dear.
What was that? What was that from
It is raining. It
from
is
the
raining
third
here.
floor of Macy's?
Yes, it is raining here now. Yes,
Okay, glory, hallelujah.
yes,
We do also have a few heavier downpours back in Virginia, and extending into central North Carolina around Raleigh, Durham. But then it sort of tails off and lightens up over the rest of South Carolina and South Georgia. Some heavier showers also in parts of, this is good news because the northern part of West Virginia is under exceptional drought
right.
conditions from the drought monitor folks. And they're actually seeing maybe some steady rain there. So that's good news there. And they may get a little bit more because uh, there's there's some stuff in Kentucky that's moving in the same general direction. A little bit of activity up in the northernmost lakes, northernmost Michigan, and in and around Sault Ste. Marie, and then back up on the Canada side in Ontario province. We've got some light precip in parts of Montana and Idaho, and also you can see rain that is coming in now to the Pacific Northwest. Nothing much to worry about from the Storm Prediction Center. No severe weather is forecast for the next 2 days, so we'll jump to day three, which is Tuesday into Wednesday, a very small area of marginal risk in northwest Texas and western Oklahoma. and the 7 day rainfall amounts. Now, if you take out, looks like WPC has got, they stuck in this half-inch area now over central and South Jersey. I mean, maybe they're looking at the radar and seeing what's back in Pennsylvania, and that's going to, slide eastward. We'll see. And also at the southeast PA, a quarter of an inch to the Hudson Valley and and the southern half of Connecticut. Also, quarter of an inch amounts in southeast Virginia into North Carolina. Seeing some heavier amounts. These are 7 day rainfall amounts. South Carolina, the southern Appalachians, down through Alabama and Mississippi and Louisiana. A little area there of an inch and a half to 2 inches from northwest Louisiana into south central Tennessee. And every day for the last week, we've seen big rains advertised for the Pacific Northwest, and it continues to be advertised for the next 7 days. We're talking about, I think that's 5 to 7 inches at least, and even that little area yellow is 10 to 15 in northwestern Washington state. Certainly, the East could use that. Anywhere up and down the eastern seaboard can use that because it is so bone dry. So, just checking out what's going on with the models. You know, you know, one thing I've noticed, we keep seeing models trying to point to pattern change uh, after around, say, the 20th of November, uh, and it keeps somehow getting pushed back. I think we have to just continue to recognize that as long as we've got this ridging in the eastern part of the United States, it's not nowhere near as strong as it was in the last 2 weeks, but it's still there. We got that has to go away, okay? And the other thing to watch out for is that if we continue to see tropical storm development in the Caribbean, that does not help the cause, okay? Because all that does, if you keep getting storms forming in the Caribbean that don't cut through the ridge and instead either go west or if they go into the Gulf of Mexico, uh, what winds up happening is that the outflow, the dry air outflow from these hurricanes, all wind up feeding the ridge even more and making it stronger. So then you wind up seeing it flexing. Now, we do see what looks like a pretty blocky pattern showing up. It's kind of interesting, Joe. We're going to, I think, a negative East Pacific oscillation signal, which is a cold signal for the eastern part of the United States in the longer term. And we do see the models kind of trending this way after the 20th. We suddenly got, nice deep troughing in the east and what looks to be a much colder look. But I'm going to just kind of continue to sit back and be somewhat skeptical until we get to a point where it really does look like we're headed in that direction. It may not, um, it may not mean more rain or more precipitation, by the way. We could have this happen, and if the 500 in the southern half of the jet gets displaced as far south as it is, if it doesn't set up correctly, we could still wind up being dry. Blocks, if you're in some, depending on where you are in a blocking pattern like this, you could wind up getting no precipitation at all. So there are things here that say that things are going to change during the second half of the month. I often say that pattern changes are not light switch flips, they're grinding processes. So this may wind up being another grinding process that we're going to have to go through.
Now, did you see? I'm sure you did. The GFS and what it cranked out at the 330-hour mark. That
Oh,
would be that would
you
be for
mean
2 weeks from now.
you mean this? You mean the hurricane that comes out of the Caribbean, crosses Cuba, becomes a post-tropical um, monster cyclone and buries coastal New Jersey to southern New England. Yes, and I have it on the
Right,
screen.
right.
And of course, that was the 12Z. We go to the 18Z, and there's
Right.
nothing. Yeah, and I just love how the social media bunnies just keep, the social media snow bunnies. Every run they cherry pick something in the day 10 to day 16 time frame, and they put that stupid disclaimer that says, "But this is not a
But
forecast."
this
Then
is not a forecast. Yes.
okay, then what's the point of putting it up? Okay, if it's not a fork, I mean, I know what the point is for putting it up. It's to get clicks and to get likes and to spark engagement so you can make money. But you're not fooling anybody by doing this crap.
You know,
Okay.
when I emceed the ninth Tri-State Weather Conference about a month and a half ago in Connecticut, one of the keynote speaker there, and I'm sorry to say that my mind is so scrambled right now. I don't remember his name, but he was the head of the eastern region of the National Weather Service. And the only editorial comment I made during the time that I was up there on the podium introducing the various speakers was the thing that drives me crazy as in the wintertime. When you see a TV weather forecaster say, we have a chance for an impending big storm coming our way about a week from now. Here's what the GFS is saying. But wait a minute, here's what the European is indicating. And now here's what the Canadian model. And at that point, I said, you must realize that what we do is what we call these are guidance models. These are to guide the synoptic forecaster to make a forecast for a specific time frame. I hate when they show you three or four different models and show you what each model is saying in its own mathematical way, in terms of whatever algorithms the map is based on. And this one's going for 12 inches, but this one over here says we're only going to get a dusting, and that one is only. And as I'm saying this, my eye was looking down into the audience toward the head of the eastern region of the National Weather Service, and he was going like this. He was shaking his head, and that made me feel good because it made me aware of the fact that here was somebody in the highest levels of at least the government forecast agreeing with me. Meanwhile, there were a few private forecasters, TV people, who were off to one side, and I'm looking, and one of them actually was shaking his head like that. So, I mean, maybe they do it. They show all the models and the variances and differences in them to maybe get people, excited, or I say it just confuses the average viewer. And again, it's unfortunate. If I were still doing television, I would never ever do it that way because again,
No.
what you do is you take all of those models and you kind of lump them into one big consensus, and then you show your map and you show this is what I am basing the forecast on based upon all the models. I'm not basing it on this one and that one. And sometimes, and we had one guy at News 12, the traffic and weather channel 61, who always placed his forecasts basically on one model, and that was the European. He said the European, that's what his forecasts usually were based on. And you can't do that. You just can't do that. And as you say, Joe, you can't cherry pick,
No.
especially more than a week in advance. And like I said, what I just talked about, we were just talking about with the snow cane, if you will. That's 2 weeks from now. That's 14 days down the road. And that was with the GFS from the 12Z run this morning. And again, I've said this over and over again. If it were up to me, I'd never go more than 5 days out. I hate the 7 day, I hate the 10 day forecast. One of these fine days, you're going to see a TV station
I don't have.
15 day outlook.
I've never. Well, they're already out there. I never used would show multiple models for something in the long range. I did it in snowstorms in the short range, where it's just getting ready to get underway, or maybe the day before. Okay, um, where we were, still kind of trying to work out the differences in the final, forecast. But
Right, I
that,
agree with you
but I,
there. You say,
yeah,
what are
but
you going to do? What
I
are you going
never
to
did
do?
it, never did it 10 days out.
What are you going to do if it's 24 hours from the storm that everybody's talking about, and your two most basic tools, let's say the NAM and the GFS, are at odds? The NAM is taking the storm and smashing us with 20 inches of snow, and meanwhile the GFS is still saying the storm is going to sidestep us and just graze us with a few. Then, if it's within 24 hours, I agree with you. But then I also agree with you in the fact that you don't do that 5 days, 8 days, 10 days down the road because everything changes. But again, the thing that I stressed in my little rant at the podium at the weather conference was these are guidance models. They are to guide you, as to what you're going to ultimately predict. You
Right.
don't take one and say, this is what's going to happen, or that's what's going to happen. And I believe, then you're, as Alan Casper used to say, and I remember many times when he was, you know, doing his bit with Jim Jensen back in the 70s or whatever like that. He said some forecasters like to forecast with their head, but a lot of others, especially snow lovers, like to forecast with their heart. And that's not the way you play the game.
Yeah. It's a different world now. It's a totally different world
Oh, yeah.
with respect to what on-air forecasters do. You and I got out at the right time. We got out with our integrity, which was good for the most
Is
part.
that what it was?
Right. We were able to leave with our pants on and not down. So,
Jason Toole. Thank you. Thank you, Rich Rothmansky. That was the head of the Eastern region was Dr. Jason Toole. Very, very nice guy. And I enjoyed his talk that he gave at the conference, and we both enjoyed chatting either before and after the conference as well. Jason Toole, the head of the Eastern region of the
all right.
National Weather Service.
All right, so let me real quick, we'll go through the GFS surface because there's not a whole lot happening. I mean, obviously, we've got this rain that's coming through tonight, and that's gone. You can see the big high to the north. The gradient tightens up, so the wind is going to be blowing from the north. It's going to feel cold for sure. Tuesday, probably not much out of the mid and upper 50s for most of eastern PA to southern New England. A lot of that cooler air is going to try to bleed down into the mid Atlantic and even into the southeast. And again, Tuesday night into Wednesday morning with a north northeast wind and a high to the north, it's going to be cold. But we'll start to bounce up a bit going into Thursday. Now, this next system moves across the Great Lakes and weekends, and it looks like the area of rain with this is going to wind up getting forced to our south because it is kind of blocky out in the Atlantic. There's this, strong system that's going to be south of Atlantic Canada that's going to kind of force this next thing to go underneath. So if that's right, we get nothing in the way of rain and even some snow and ice back westward into Atlantic Canada and into Maine from this system come later Thursday into Friday. We'll have dry weather going into next week. Looks like a front comes through maybe next Monday, and then who knows after that, depending on, now the model wants to go back and have some kind of blizzard in the plains for, the early part of the week of, this would be the week beginning Monday, the 18th of November. It's got some kind of low that it wants to bring out deep into the central plains and northern plains with snows there. And we just got, dry weather here in the east, but not particularly warm weather, maybe more like seasonal conditions, I think. And then we'll see where it goes from there. And you know what? You'll probably see a few runs do some crazy things. Uh, I think there's still the possibility down the road of the next 2 weeks we could see at least one more tropical storm come out of the Caribbean, um, which I don't think would be a good sign for those of you who want to see a full. The only thing that would, how it would work, if you do get a tropical system that comes out of the Caribbean, it's got to do something like the 12Z run had, which is to go northward through Cuba and plow through the ridge and basically rip it apart. I mean, that would create a major pattern shift in the eastern part of the United States in the longer term. But if that doesn't happen, you wind up keeping something that stays in the Caribbean or goes in the Gulf, and all that does is reinforce the southeast ridge. So we'll, look at this again, of course, tomorrow. In the meantime, let's quickly run through Briller Jeopardy because I already missed 11 minutes of Yellowstone. Um, so we're doing average highs for November in these 5 cities. We'll start with Phoenix, Arizona. Joe,
Phoenix, Arizona.
yes,
Average high temperatures?
yes,
Uh,
for November.
God.
The way it's been there, you want to say 100, I know, but
Yeah, well, Renata and I, back in 1985, we were in Phoenix in early October of 85, and it was like 97 degrees. So I don't even know what the heck to go for here. Why don't I say the heck with it? I'll say 81.
that's not a bad guess. It's actually a little bit too high. Uh, Rich Rothmansky, you're actually fairly close with your 74. At Jason Fox, you're even closer at 75. And Vincent Croce, you're very close on the other direction at 77. So what that means is that it is
76.
76. Correct, 76. Richmond, Virginia.
Richmond, Virginia. Well, how about 50, 53?
That's a little too low. It's a little too low. Um, some of you are posting mid and upper 60s. That's actually a little bit too high. Craig Carlberg, you're not far at 58. Michael McGuire, you're very close at 61. And Howard A., you're very close at 61. Frank Scolari, you're close the other way at 59. So what does that leave us with, Joe? 60 from Coin Pig. Coin Pig gets it at 60. Rochester, New York.
Rochester, how about 47?
Very close. Very close. A little low, but very close. Okay. Conroy Jet, you're even closer at 48. Jason Fox gets it at 49, and Vincent Croce at 49. So give him a bell
And William
ring.
Huber, too, at 49.
And
Yes.
Bill Huber, give him a bell ring.
I will give it a bell ring. Ding, 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 ding.
Okay, St. Louis.
St. Louis. St. Louis. St. Louis? Emma! 54?
Close. Very close. Even closer, Steve Lapointe. Nice to see you at 55. And Michael McGuire, very close at 55. Vincent Croce and Rich Rothmansky are very close at 57, but they're close in the other direction. So William Uber gets it, and Coin Pig gets it at 56. And since we already rang the bell for you, we're not going to re-ring it. Virginia Beach is the last one.
Virginia Beach. Virginia Beach. 50, 54.
54 is a bit too low.
There.
Michael McGuire at 62 gets it, and so does Rich Rothmansky, 62. And the bonus tonight, Joe, is
Caribou, Maine.
no, it's not. It's Canaras Eckle, which is
Excuse-
Saranac Eckle, which is Saranac Lake, New York.
Oh, Saranac Lake. 47.
Too high.
Really? Okay.
Too high. So when I say too high, he missed it by 5 or more. Rothmansky at 42 is very close. Carlberg at 38 is not high enough. Let's see. Up, Coin Pig and Birder Lady. Let's ring the bell for Birder Lady. 41.
Yeah.
And for Coin Pig, 41.
Birder Lady. By the way, Birder Lady, I only took down my hummingbird feeders about a week ago. So, you never know. The hummingbirds, especially with the spell of warm weather that we had, you figure that there might be a stray that still might have been fluttering around somewhere, but they're
Yeah.
down now. To me, Joe, at least in my area, hummingbird season begins on Mother's Day and ends Labor Day weekend or thereabouts. But this year it's so warm and so dry, I figured, well, what the hell? Let's keep them up for a little longer. So
Yeah, I had them. I had them a couple of weeks ago, maybe about two weeks or so ago. There was still one or two fluttering around, but they're all gone now. All right, time to say goodnight. I'm very tired. When you're scrubbing a cedar chest all day with paint stripper, it takes its toll. So
yes,
I'm gonna watch. I'm gonna want to watch 45 or so minutes of Yellowstone. And we'll see everybody tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. All right. Have a great night. Have a good week ahead. We'll see you tomorrow. Night, night.
good night.